What's up guys, Rhett Tollison here with KST Kustoms. Today we're going to go through the install process on a 2016 Street Glide. This is going to be the same process for your 2014 to 2020 models. We're going to be putting a 12-inch Mayhem Bagger on this bike. We have a couple different bars that'll fit this model. We've got the Mayhem Bagger, which we're doing today. We've got the Punisher, which is going to be exactly the same as this. It's just got a 3-hole gusset in the corners. We've got the 6-bend, which is just your traditional rounded version. And then we've got our new Bison Bagger, which is an 1.5 inch diameter handlebar. Gives you a really clean look. It's also going to be easy to run your wires internally. But today we're going to do the Mayhem Bagger. We're going to go through 3 different steps here. We've got the tear down, the disassembly process, which will be removing the bars. Then we've got the internal wiring process. And then we got remounting your new bars and putting everything back together. All right, so before we get started, we're gonna make sure that our tank and our front fender are protected so that nothing gets dropped on it, doesn't get scratched during the tear down process. I've also got some protective bags that we'll use to put our brake and clutch master cylinders in. So to get this outer shell off of the fairing, you've got 4 bolts, 2 on each side. On the inside of the inner fairing, you've got 3 bolts on the outside. Those are all going to be Torx 27. So we're going to remove those, do away with our windshield and our outer shell. Then we've also got the bolts that hold our blinkers on. We're going to remove them. They're 1/2 inch socket. And then under that is going to be a 9/16 socket. We'll remove those as well. The last bolts we'll take off to disassemble our fairing. You're going to have T25 bolts here on the inside, 1 on each side. So we'll start with taking those apart. All right, so these are our 4 inner fairing bolts. It says T27. Got 2 on each side. All right, now we're gonna get these side bolts that hold this cap on that goes underneath the switch. These are T25 as well. That'll release that inner cap piece there. All right, now we're gonna get our 3 bolts that hold the outside and the windshield of the outer fairing on. These are T27. And before you take this last one out, just make sure you've got some pressure against the fairing so that it doesn't fall down on the ground. All right, when you take your outer shell off, you'll notice you have a headlight plug. This is an aftermarket headlight, so the plug is just a little bit different. If it's a stock headlight, you're gonna have 2 plugs going into it. One is the high beam, one is the low beam. So just depending on what headlight you have, the plug-in assembly may be a little bit different. So once that's unplugged, your fairing, you can now put it in a place that's safe, it won't get beat up, and we'll go on to the next step. All right, now we're gonna remove our blinkers. This will be the same process on the left and the right. You've got a 1/2 inch acorn nut that actually holds the blinker on. So we're gonna take those off. Behind that is a 9/16 bolt. Take it off. This will allow our fairing to rotate forward. Your blinker also has a plug. It's just got a little push button. Depress it, and it'll slide right out. This is our 9/16 bolts. We'll remove. All right, so now that we've got all of our bolts removed from the fairing, our fairing can now be rotated back so that we can get to the bars in the riser. Before we do anything, we're going to remove this piece here that goes around our front forks. And this is where we're going to unplug our switch harness wires, our throttle by wire, and also if you have heated grips, this is where you're going to unplug the power for the heated grips. If you'll notice, it's going to be on the rider's left-hand side. It'll be a red and black wire. So we're going to go through unplugging everything. All right, so first we're going to get our throttle by wire. On the 2014, 2015 models, this is going to be a much bigger black plug. On your 16 to 20 models, this is going to be a small plug. It's got 6 wires. 2 of them are red, 2 of them are white, 2 of them are black. So if you get a small flathead screwdriver, there's a small button. Just depress it, it'll pull right out. Then you're going to have your right hand switch harness wires. This is going to be 2 plugs. One of the plugs is just a single white wire. The other one has 4 wires on it. And we're going to get our left hand switch harness plug. And then if you have heated grips, we're going to unplug this plug as well. All right, so on 12-inch bars, they can be installed without changing out your brake and clutch lines. A couple things you need to do though is cut some zip ties. One of them is going to be on the front side of the bike where we're at right now. This zip tie holds the brake and the clutch together. So we're just going to cut it. It's going to give us a little bit of extra length. All right, all our bolts are removed. So now we're going to rotate our fairing back. This will expose everything to the riser. This will also allow us to pull our electrical harnesses out before we remove our bars. All right, now we're going to remove our perch clamp bolts that hold our brake and clutch master cylinders on. These are going to be Torx 27. To make sure that nothing gets scratched up during this process, we're going to use our protective bags to put our master cylinders in, protect our levers, protect our body. All right, so we've got some zip ties here that we need to cut off to free up our electrical harnesses. So we're going to snip them. You have some on each side. All right, so now we'll pull our electrical harnesses out of the fairing. Just be careful that none of your plugs hang up and you damage any of them. If you need to pick up on the fairing, you can. All right, now that we have all of our electrical harnesses removed from the fairing, we're ready to pop out the bolts that hold the bars on the bike and remove the bars from the bike. These are 1/4 inch Allen head. All right, we've got 2 more zip ties that we're gonna get rid of to give us some more slack in our brake and clutch lines. There's one around each riser on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. Some of these are really, really tight. So we like to get a pair of needle nose pliers, just grab them and spin them around and the zip tie will eventually break. All right, the last thing that we're gonna do to give us that little bit extra slack we need in our clutch line, we're gonna rotate the fairing up. And you're gonna want it to sit in a little bit over-rotated position. What we're gonna do is route our clutch line on the other side of the neck here. Like I said, this will give us the last little bit of slack that we need. so that our brake and clutch lines will reach the handlebars. All right, so your clutch line is nested in this little plastic hose tray. We're gonna pop the clutch line out of this hose tray, and right now your clutch line goes up the left side of the neck. We're going to reroute it where it goes on the right side of the neck. This is gonna give us about an extra 2.5 inches and really free up our clutch line to mount on the handlebars. You may have to push up a little bit on this plastic tray to get it to go. But essentially that's all we're trying to achieve there. Now your clutch line goes on the right side of the neck, and like I said, it gives you a little bit extra room. All right, so now we're gonna remove our stock harnesses from our stock bars. If you have heated grips, you'll notice one of the harnesses coming out of the left-hand side of the bar, this being the left-hand side, is gonna plug into your throttle by wire harness, which is coming through the right side. So we're gonna do just like we did on the bike, just unplug them. Now we're going to take the bolts out of our switch covers. These are T25. One thing before we do that, you'll notice you have an odometer button on the left-hand side, rider's left-hand side. That's gonna pop up, and then you're gonna slide it out. It'll feel like it's gonna break. It's pretty durable. I've only broke 2 in 5 years, so if you do break it, you can obviously get a replacement, but it's pretty simple. Like I said, it just pops up and then it'll slide out towards the end of the grip there. All right, so we're gonna take our bolts out. They're double threaded, so don't thread them all the way out. You just want to thread them out of this side of the switch cover. There's no need to thread it all the way out of the other switch cover. Same thing on the other side. All right, so on the heated grips, there is a plug on the throttle side that plugs into the throttle by wire sensor. If you get a flathead screwdriver, this end cap will pop off, and you get a pair of needle nose pliers. Some smaller than this would be preferable, but you're gonna grab that plug and just slide it straight out. All right, so we're gonna remove the switch housing from the stock bar now. Get your flathead screwdriver again. There's a small tab right here we're just gonna lift up on, and it's gonna open the door, and then that'll come off the bar. Same thing on the other side. All right, same thing on the other side. Pop the tab, open the door, pop right off. All right, so the last thing, we're gonna pull our throttle by wire harness out of the bar. Just pull it out of the little notches that are on the end of the bar. Just kind of ease it out. All right, if you have heated grips, you'll notice these 2 harnesses are obviously in the bar, so we're gonna ease them out as well. All right, so we're done now with our removal of our stock harnesses from the stock bar. So now we're gonna start loading our harnesses back into our new bar. All right, so once you get your handlebars, they're gonna come in a box. We don't recommend tearing the foam completely off of them. We don't want anything to get scratched or banged up during the internal wiring process. So we like to just tear the foam off of the handles and tear it off enough at the base where you can get to the center slot. All right, so just tear it off. tear the foam off just up to the 1¼ inch part where you have access to the slot there. Same thing on the other side. And if you want to tear into the base a little bit more, you can. Main thing, we don't want to damage anything that's visible. Anything that's going to be in your face, you know, anything that people are going to see, we want that to stay intact and in good shape. All right, so before you start loading your harnesses in your bars, couple things. You want to make sure you've got a good spot, you know, that's secure and stable to do your work on. Here we're using a vise and something that we've kind of fabricated. If you see us at the rallies, you'll see us doing them in our lap. This is our preferred way. It's just the way we've always done it. So just whatever works best for you. We don't recommend just laying them on the table and rubbing them around. The bars may get scratched up. So you want something that's a little bit elevated. Like I said, our preferred method is doing it in our lap, but this works right here as well. So before we get started, a couple things that we want to do. This stock throttle by wire harness comes with a thick black loom on it. We want to remove it completely, and we're going to do just a single loop of electrical tape around the harness. We're also going to de-pin this big black connector. This is for our heated grips, and then we're going to do the same thing on the left side for our heated grip harness. All right, so we're going to peel this electrical tape that comes on here. Try to leave this blue tape on the harness. This shows if there ever was an issue. If you'll notice, you've got 2 red wires, 2 black wires, 2 white wires. This blue tape keeps the group of red, black, and white wires together, and it just shows which side that they're supposed to go on. It's more of just precautionary. If you do lose it, it's not the end of the world. If it comes off, it's not the end of the world. But just down the road, it's a good idea to keep it on there. I'll peel that tape back. All right, we like to use these surgical scissors. It kind of helps ensure that the harness isn't damaged when we're cutting it off. But regular scissors will work. Just be careful not to nick the harness when you're removing this. All right, now just to make sure that the harness stays together when we're pulling it inside the bar, we're just gonna do a single loop of electrical tape about every 4 or 5 inches. And this is the process that we've been doing it for 5 years now. We've never had any chafing issues inside the bar from the wires rubbing against the tube. Okay, now lastly on the throttle by wire harness, we're gonna de-pin this plug here. This is for if you have heated grips. If you don't have heated grips, we still like to de-pin it. It just makes it going through the bar easier. If you have no plans to ever add heated grips, you can snip it off here. All right, so on this plug, you'll notice there's a tiny door on the back side. We're gonna get a small flathead screwdriver. There's tabs on either side of it. We're just gonna wedge our little screwdriver in there and open up that door. All right, so before you de-pin your wires, just take note of where the black wire is, where the white wire is. You can draw your little map or take a picture of it, you know, whatever. We've got a small flathead screwdriver that we've ground down to where it just makes a skinny point. There are tabs inside where your wire terminals are. You're gonna lift up on those tabs slightly and the pin will pull out. You kind of just got to get a feel for it. Pull out just like that. All right, now on the heated grip side, we're gonna do something real similar that we did on our throttle by wire harness. It has the same type connections, same process with the door, popping it loose, depinning the wire pins. You've got a male and a female, but essentially they're pretty much the same as the throttle by wire side. Once again, take note of where your wires are. On one of these harnesses you have a black and a red. The other one you just have zebra look, black and white, black and white. So before we depin the plugs, we're gonna do just like we did on our throttle by wire harness. Just do a single loop of electrical tape about every 4 inches just to keep the harness together. All right, so just like we did on the throttle by wire harness, I'm gonna open the door. I'm gonna depress. Remove that plug, and same thing on the male plug. Open the door. That one. That one. All right, so now we're ready to start loading our switch harnesses into the handlebar. All right, so now we're going to blow a string through our bar. We're going to use this string to get our pull wire through the handlebar. This is just your everyday string. We've got an air compressor, just going to blow it through. We like to start with the throttle side first. If you don't have heated grips, you just have 2 harnesses that you're trying to get through the throttle sides. We like to do the hard side first. So we're going to blow our string through the base slot here in the middle, and it'll go right out the handle.
Never happened. There you go.
All right, so we're going to pull our string through the slot where our switch harness wires will go, and we're just going to feed our pull wire through the bar. Now this pull wire is a 12 gauge copper stranded wire. We've tried everything, taken every suggestion. This seems to be the one thing that has always worked the best for us. So 12 gauge copper stranded. And the trick during this process is to push the harness through the bar and pull the slack out. If you get hung up, back feed it a little bit and try again. Maybe twist the harness just a tad. It might be catching an edge somewhere inside the bar. All right, so we're on our right hand switch harness. What you want to do is where they'll go in there as smooth as possible. You don't want to line them up, where they're making a bigger obstruction than what they already are. So we want to line them up the best we can, and we're going to start taping right behind the plug. Do a nice tight loop of tape and just carry on all the way to the end of the plugs. You don't want to over tape this. You want the least amount of stuff going through the bar as possible. So just get a nice tight wound run of tape. All right, so now we're going to start pushing our harness through the bar. Like I stated earlier, you want to push the harness and pull out the slack. Push, pull out the slack. All right, if you need to, you can remove the switch harness out of the switch housing to give you a little bit extra length. All right, once your harness comes out of the bottom slot here, you can remove your tape. All right, so now we're gonna feed our pull wire down to our string, and we're gonna feed our string through the end of the handle. And now chase our pull wire through the end of the tube. And we'll be ready to tape off our throttle by wire harness and snake it through. All right, same thing for the throttle by wire harness. We don't want to use a ton of tape. Just want to tape it tight and tape it light. We're going to start right behind the plug. Good to go. All right, so same principle here. You're gonna push the harness, pull out the slack. If you get hung up, just back it out a little bit. You can turn the harness. Once it comes out of the bottom slot here, you can untape it. All right, now we're done with the right side. So you can remove your pull wire from the right side of the handlebar. So when you're doing this, just make sure that it doesn't catch on the switch harness and for whatever reason, pull it back through the bar. You don't want to lose what you've already pulled through. So now we're ready to start on the left side. We're gonna do about the same thing. We're gonna blow our harness through, or blow our string through the bar, and then pull our pull wire through as well. All right, so we're gonna tape off our left harness. Once again, just right behind the plug, nice and tight. All right, now we're gonna push and pull our harness through, just like we did on the right side. Once it comes through the bottom slot, you can untape it. All right, same thing for our heated grip harness that we did for the throttle by wire. We're gonna feed our pull wire through till we get to our string. And we're gonna feed it out of the end of the tube. All right, so first we're gonna tape these two harnesses together. Same principle, just tight and light. All right, then we're gonna tape our harness to the pull wire. And we're gonna push and pull them through. You can untape it once it comes out of the slot. All right, so now we're gonna put our plug connectors back on our throttle by wire harness for our heated grips. And we're also going to put our plug connectors on our heated grip harness on the left side as well. Just remember, take a look at your picture or your map that you drew. Make sure you got your colors back in the right spot. These just pop right back in there, and then you'll close that tiny door that we opened earlier. That just locks them in. All right, so now we're gonna plug in our electrical extensions. We have these for our wiring harnesses, and we also have the heated grip extensions as well. These they're just plug and play. They plug right in to your existing stock harness, and then they'll plug into the bike. I'll plug in the left side extension. This is just a single plug. We'll plug in the right side extension. This will be your 2-plug. And then we will plug in our heated grip extensions. These are just color coded. Just match them up. All right, so we're gonna make the loop for our right hand and our left hand heated grips. You're gonna plug in the white and black harness from the left hand side to the white and black plug coming out of the throttle by wire harness. Once again, this is gonna make the loop. The other harness that comes out of the throttle by wire, that's for your power. It'll plug into the bike. All right, so now we're gonna mount our switch housings back onto the bar. If you had to pull your harness out of the housing, we're gonna make sure that we nest it back in there the way it was. This will prevent it from getting pinched or in a bind when you clamp it all down. So we're gonna make sure that the harness is going through these 2 teeth here and into this little slot so that there's no interference with the tube and it. And then it's just gonna clip on. You'll hear it click. Same thing on the other side.
Say that again. Make sure you're speaking up.
Okay.
And stuff.
Just clip onto the bar and you'll hear the door click. This grip is keyed, so it'll nest into the switch housing. All right, so now we're gonna slide our throttle grip onto the bar. If you have heated grips, this is where you're gonna plug in the power plug to the throttle by wire sensor. This has got 2 prongs, and it's kind of hard to see, but there are 2 plug-in points for those prongs that are in the end of the sensor. We use a pair of needle nose pliers to grab the plug. Just try to line it up. Don't force it, you don't want to bend them. Pop right in. Just kind of nest that wire down in there. Then you can put your cap on. All right, now we're gonna pop our switch covers on. Go on just like they came off. Using a Torx 25. Don't tighten them all the way down. In case you need to adjust them when we get them on the bike. All right, lastly, we're gonna pop our odometer button back on. This just slides on. All right, we're good to go. We're ready to put our bars on the bike now. All right, so now we're going to seat our bars into our riser, and we're gonna feed our electrical harnesses down through the fairing. It doesn't have to be pretty, you just wanna get them push through to the other side so that when we flip the fairing up, you'll be able to plug them in. All right, now we're gonna put our riser clamp on. Get your bolt started a little bit. So we like to tighten the top 2 bolts all the way down and then just snug up the bottom bolts. That way we can put the fairing completely back together and we can still adjust the bars when we get on the bike. All right, so now we're gonna pop our foam off. All right, now we can mount our brake and clutch master cylinders onto the bar. Just make sure that they nest in there good. All right, now we're ready to rotate our fairing forward and we'll plug all of our electrical harnesses up. All right, so we're gonna start on the left side here, plug our throttle by wire harness in. We're gonna plug our right switch harness up. Plug our left harness up. And if you have heated grips, we'll plug them up as well. Just double check them, make sure they're nested in there good. All right, so now we're gonna pop our lower cap back on. It just kind of clicks in place. And we're gonna go ahead and put our side bolts in, tighten them down, and also put the blinkers back on top and put our acorn nuts back on there as well. Just get them started. All right, we're gonna do the same thing for the other side. All right, another product that we offer is our mirror brackets. When you go with 10 or 12-inch bars, you're gonna lose a lot of your mirror. So these brackets, they allow you to keep your stock fairing mounted mirrors. They just lower them 3.5 inches. It's a pretty simple product. The mirror will come off of the fairing. The bracket bolts in where the mirror was, and the mirror will bolt into the bracket.
All right.
All right, so now we're ready to put our outer fairing back on. Once again, we're gonna plug in our headlight. Depending on the type of headlight that you have, your plug may look a little different. This one's just a single connection. A stock headlight has the high-low plugs. Just remember how you took it apart and reassemble it the same way. So we're going to nest our fairing in, pop it back together. We'll set our windshield. All right, so now we're going to put our inner fairing bolts back in. These are T27. If you'll notice, you've got a long bolt and a short bolt. We want to make sure that the long bolt goes on top and the short one goes on the bottom. All right, so if you'll notice, we still don't have our inner cap here bolted back together. If you remember correctly, on the riser clamp, we tightened the top 2 bolts and just snugged up the bottom 2 bolts. What this is going to allow us to do is we're going to sit on the bike, adjust the bars where we want them, and you can get to those 2 lower bolts with a 1/4 inch ball end hex drive. That ball end will allow you to get in there at an angle and tighten those lower riser bolts up. So we like to do this so guys can sit on the bike, adjust it where they want it. And also, this is just a good tip. If you ride the bike, X amount of miles and you're just not happy with where they are, you want them back to you a little bit or a little bit farther forward, this is an easy way to adjust it without taking the whole fairing back apart. If you'll notice, you can see the top riser bolt there. That's where we're going to get in with our 1/4 inch ball end. Just make sure it's seated down in there good. And once you get the bars where you want them, you can tighten it up. Do the same thing for the other side. All right, now we can finish the assembly of this inner cap. You can put your T25 bolts in there. Just make sure, you notice these little tabs, just make sure that it's seated up in there good, and you can put your bolts in. All right, so now we're gonna tighten up our perch clamps and our switch covers. Just sit on the bike, make sure you got them where you want them. They'll rotate up, down. Just make sure you're comfortable where the levers are and where the buttons are. These are T25 on the switch housings, T27 on the perch clamps. All right, so that pretty much concludes our installation of our 12-inch Mayhem Baggers on our 2016 Street Glide. Once again, this process is about the same for 2014 to 2020 models. A couple add-ons that we used that can be found on the website, www.kstkustoms.com. Our mirror brackets. If you don't want to use the stock fairing mounted mirrors, we also have the hole plugs if you plan on going with bar mounted mirrors. We use the wire extensions, our heated grip extensions. Those are a necessity for the install. You don't have to change out your brake and clutch, obviously. So if you need any of those items, they can be found on the website. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact us, either call us, reach out on the contact us page on the website, shoot us a quick email. But that sums it up for the day. Thanks for hanging out with us. I'll see you down the road.